Hey everyone, I'm Jessica Kramer with MRC-TV. Today we're back with Ian Pryor to discuss the latest in Loudoun County Public Schools. Ian, great to have you on. You just got back from court where you represented America First Legal in a case against Loudoun County Public Schools. Can you first tell us about that case?
Sure. The case is brought by several parents who have children in Loudoun County Public Schools. And it alleges that, a series of policies and practices of Loudoun County Public Schools restricts parents' rights under the Virginia Constitution to guide the upbringing of their children. And, these policies withhold information from parents, do not allow parents to opt out of, questionable experimental material, and that because of that, it is a violation of their constitutional rights under the Virginia Constitution.
Now, being back from court, what was the most interesting thing that you took away?
Well, these arguments are always very interesting. The judge was certainly paying close attention to the arguments. But, one of the things that I think was most illuminating was the arguments of Loudoun County Public Schools. They had several interesting arguments where one of them was basically that you can't even challenge a provision as being unconstitutional if it applies to all kids as opposed to just a few kids. So in other words, you don't even get to say something's unconstitutional if it applies to everybody. We can give you pornographic books as long as we give it to everybody, which that made absolutely no sense. The other argument was that, look, if you have a problem with the policies of Loudoun County Public Schools, all you can do is go and vote a new school board in. Well, that's anathema to our system of government where courts have the right to review certain policies and actions that may violate the Constitution or statute. So I thought that was a very interesting and telling argument from LCPS that they think that they have absolute authority and that the Constitution, the law, and the courts really don't matter. And then third, it was look, if you don't like what we're doing, you put your kids in our school, we close the door. If you don't like what we do, we're not going to tell you about it. You can just take your kids out and go to private school while still paying the taxes that fund our operation. That's really sort of the basic broad strokes argument that they used. And they really didn't get into the constitutionality of the various practices and policies that we were challenging. So it's going to be interesting to see, in the next week or so, how the court comes down on this.
Wow. Well, what was reaction in the court when they said that?
There were a few parents there, and I think they were, very frustrated to hear that. But it was no surprise. That was essentially what was in their briefs. And these parents really, are focused on exercising their rights, and not just for their children, to make sure that the school system, respects the parents' right not to, choose how they teach math or how they teach reading or writing or whether, kids do push-ups and sit-ups in gym class, but really on the fundamental issues that are going on in schools that never used to go on in schools that truly impact the parents' right to raise their children according to their moral compass.
Well, we spoke with a Loudoun County parent. Loudoun County School Board commissioned attorneys Blankenship and Keith to do a report and investigation on the sexual assault situation. According to Loudoun County parent Michael Rivera, everyone thought that this was going to be made public, but the school board has voted to not release this private report. Does this have anything to do with the grand jury still being in effect? Why do you expect that this report is not being made public to parents?
Well, that's certainly my theory. I look at how this all went down. Last year we learned that this independent report was complete. We sent a Freedom of Information Act request for it. They denied it under attorney-client privilege. We challenged that in court. They were able to keep it behind attorney-client privilege, but they really showed the world that, they are willing to hide everything they can behind that privilege. And the grand jury didn't take kindly to that. And they made a specific recommendation that on matters of legitimate public concern, of which this obviously is, that LCPS should stop using the attorney-client privilege as a shield in providing parents and taxpayers that information. Now, you would have thought that after the grand jury recommendations, after terminating Scott Ziegler, after Scott Ziegler got indicted, that the smart move would be to just release the report with the appropriate redactions and let's end the story here and move on to, rebuilding trust. But they didn't do that. Instead, they just waited and waited and waited. And I suspect that they are trying to wait out the special grand jury based on the possibility that if there is something that was in that independent report that conflicts with any testimony or documents that were provided to the special grand jury, that could create some legal liability.
Now, question, just because I don't know anything about the legal system, if the grand jury were to come down on a decision, somehow Loudoun County gets away with this, and then that report finally gets made known to the public, can any of those decisions be undone?
Probably not, because, the grand jury proceedings are done in secret. So, there's really no way, other than Ziegler himself, who I believe could probably request those documents to defend his case. But there's no way to get that through the Freedom of Information Act. The Attorney General's office wouldn't be allowed to release that. So the public would really never know if there was something in that independent report that conflicted with the special grand jury. And so, unless there was a situation where, somebody came out and said, this is what I testified to, and it was different than what was in the grand jury report or in the independent report, I don't see how that could ever really get to the public.
Wow, so more incentive to keep it under wraps, I guess. What's
next? I think that's what they're looking at doing.
Yeah, what's next in terms of the grand jury?
Well, again, we don't know when it's going to be wrapped up, but I would expect that the focus of the Attorney General's office now is on the trials of former Superintendent Scott Ziegler and former spokesperson Wade Byard. They had motion hearings last week. The motions to dismiss from Scott Ziegler were denied, so he's going to head to trial in May and July. And I'm not sure the exact motion that Byard filed, but it was denied as well. So, he's going to go through discovery and trial as well. So, this is going to happen over the course of several months in the summer, and I think it's going to continue to be in the news.
Well, thank you so much, as always, Ian, for coming on and talking with us about Loudoun County.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.
Thank you.